you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another episode of All About Mechanics. Today I'm going to be giving you the Elden Hollow II dungeon. We're going to be going into Veteran, of course, on hard mode difficulty, and we're going to use the same setup as we did before. One magic, a DPS, one stamina, one tank, and one healer, so that no roles are left out. Here we go. Now when you get into this dungeon, it's going to be pretty much what you've seen before in terms of layout. It's the same as Elden Hollow 1, except for a little bit of a twist at the end. There's a couple of portals in here which take you to different realm kind of areas or different locations if you like, but the rest of it is pretty much the same. However, the enemies are completely different. We've got a lot of Daedra, lots of typical kind of Scamp and Banekin types, and then of course you've got your Daedric mages as such, kind of like your Nightblade types where they throw nasty projectiles from range. Now what you need to do, of course, is the same as before. Make sure your tank is central if possible, without too much dancing around, and pull everything in together so you can get as much area of effect down as possible. Not just obviously DPS but heals as well, because there is quite a lot of damage coming in. Anything that requires interrupts, mainly ranged targets, do need to be interrupted, not just by the tank. Everyone else can do it as well. So make sure you're on point with those. Again, you don't have to go chasing enemies unless you need to interrupt them, because the tank should really be able to pull them into the middle. Obviously the tank has to sustain just as much as you do, so just bear in mind, of course, you can't pull all of them at once. So just keep your eyes peeled for anything dangerous. Interrupt those dudes there. You can see that they cast stuff. Make sure that they don't hit the DPS if you can help it, because you will die quite quickly. They do hurt quite a lot. Now, there are a few enemies in here with two-handers. You have to watch out for those. Here's one now coming up. Make sure your tank prioritizes those targets so that they don't end up heavy attacking the group. If, however, you are a DPS or a healer and you get heavy attacked, make sure you block, otherwise you will go flying into the air. And usually there is a ranged mage type firing nastiness at you at the same time, and you can take a borderline one-shot, so be very, very careful. So prioritize the two-hander if you're a tank. Of course, chain everything else in afterwards. Now this room is a little tricky. What you need to do is Jeff, who's going to come through that portal there, if you're not familiar with my live streams, Jeff is a Daedra. The tank should grab it and turn it away from the group. We do not want to get caught by that. In the meantime, kind of peek over his shoulder and pull in those ranged targets and try and claw them up at the same time. Regardless of what type of tank you are, everyone's got some form of CC or chains, even if you take the Fighter's Guild skills, so you can always pull stuff in if you need to. In the meantime, of course, DPS and healers, keep doing what you're doing. Don't dance. Keep damage on the boss, but do make sure you've got area of effect down for those adds, and interrupt them if you need to. Now, I would not recommend burning your ultimate on this particular mini-boss, because there's another one coming up in just a second. The thing about this boss is to make sure that you do turn it away from the group. The only thing you really have to keep away from as DPS and healers is his flame breath. He will sometimes turn around and aim it at the group. If it happens, just move out of it and then move back in again, and you should be fine. Now, this boss is actually quite fun, a little tricky. We did a little diamond-shaped formation for this one, so we got the tank to turn it around, and everybody else picks a corner, basically. If you imagine a drawn diamond shape, you can see there that there's two DPS, one either side, there's a healer at the back, and there's a tank in the middle. So if we stay here, we're never going to double up on our AoEs that come and land on our head. You see that big white splash there? If you stack up, then you take too much damage, and multiple effects can happen. Like, you can double up on it, the other person gets hit, and so on. However, the tank should keep this basically on one spot all the time. And during the fight, you'll see these two bugs come out. One is green, one is blue. If you're a stamina, stand in it when it's dead, and if you're a magicka, stand in the blue one when it's dead. Because in doing so, your resources will go up a stupid amount, and so will your recovery. You'll notice that I'm spamming abilities right now, and I can't actually run out of stamina. You can see I've got 67.8k stamina at max. That's disgusting. I think I'll show you on the screen just here. If you stand in the green, you get the stamina bonus. If you stand in the magic, you get the magicka bonus. It's disgusting. Part of the fight, really fun mechanic, but basically just hold it still and don't dance. If you dance, you're going to spread AoEs and you're going to die. This pull in here, I mean, most speedruns, older speedruns specifically, you don't have to kill every single thing in the dungeon. You just have to go through it and kill what's on the way and just complete it. But there's a lot of new dungeons now that require you to kill everything, even some hidden enemies that you maybe weren't aware of. So just make it a habit to kill everything. This particular room isn't that important, but through force of habit, we kill everything we see. Now, the next boss coming up is going to be a bit of a demonstration, or relevant, let's say. It's definitely relevant to the last boss. And what you're going to see is you're going to see some fear mechanics. So just bear that in mind for a moment. That's what's coming. Anyway, this next pull up here, be very, very careful. You can jump off the edge and skip stuff, but this is not what the video is about. This is about showing mechanics. So instead of jumping off to the left and skipping the next boss, we are going to kill it. Again, two-hander, as you saw, he uppercut the tank. Be careful with that. Make sure you block it. In the meantime, of course, chain everything in. Hold your AoEs down on the middle, both heals and DPS, and you should be just fine. Interrupt range stuff as and when you need to. There's lots and lots of casters. You've got to be really careful with them. They're all trying to kill you with nasty one-shots, and a couple of them can fear you as well, so be really, really careful with those. If you get feared, don't panic, just break free. Make sure you've got plenty of stamina, though, because you're going to have to do that a lot in here. A couple of Banekins here, standard stuff. They explode, so make sure you interrupt them. And then there's a range dude there. Make sure you interrupt him so he doesn't do nasty range damage or fear people. This guy's really, really simple. Turn him away from the group as the tank, and everybody else stand behind him and just beat him down. If he starts spinning or kind of shaking, make sure you interrupt him so that he doesn't throw out loads of nasty AoEs. Really, really simple mechanic there. If you miss it, you're going to get hurt. Very, very simple. This boss, a couple Banekin first. Hold her in the center of the room as the tank, and everybody else should do the whole diamond formation type thing again if you can help it. Just stay on the spot where you are positioned. Don't run around the room. The only time you really have to move is when the fear targets come up. There'll be a black shadow that appears, and you can kill it, but if you don't kill it quick enough, it will fear you. Now, what you need to do is pay close attention here. There are some adds around the room that the tank can chain in, so your AoE damage should be able to deal with them. In the meantime, if you're close enough, or if you can reach from long range, of course, if you have Crushing Shock, make sure that you interrupt them if you see them cast it. At the moment, they're just throwing out little light attacks, so you can see to the left there. Now look in the middle, you see the shadow? That guy has to die. As you can see, he just feared me. He attaches me with a red beam, and then he fears me across the room, and there's nothing I can do. I go backwards and forwards, normally putting you into nasty AoE. That is a very, very important mechanic to remember for the last boss. Very simple. Keep her still. Turn away from the group. She does have an AoE in front of her, so don't stand in it unless you're the tank. If you are the tank, just block it. If you're DPS, you don't want to get caught by that. Really simple boss, however. Just to recap, hold her still, turn her away from the group, kill the shadows, and kill the adds. Don't need to dance around the room at all. The only time you should be dancing is if by accident you have been feared. In which case, break free and then carry on from there. Lots of Banekins. Again, you can interrupt these, especially the scamps as well if they start firing nasty flames across the ground, so be careful. This pull is really, really tricky unless you have a really good tank. Your tank needs to know how to plant their feet and kind of position everything in the center as much as possible. I would recommend using ultimates here, but there's going to be a lot of adds. So keep your heals and shields up if you need to. Don't dance around the room. If anything is aggroing you and you're not a tank, move towards the tank and just block until they can take it off you. As you can see, there's lots of range stuff coming in. These can be chained. Everything in here can be chained. So just give your tank a break. Let him have some time to pull everything in and keep doing what you're doing. Again, interrupts are key. Otherwise, you're going to get feared and you're going to go into scamp juice and loads of other nasty stuff on the ground. You see again, he needs to be interrupted. Otherwise, you get feared. Now, there's a couple more scamps coming. There's a couple more enemies coming through the portal before the last kind of enemy, who, again, is not that difficult. We have already gone over it, but you will see it again. Watch the scamps, interrupt them, otherwise the flame will get you across the ground. Very simple way to avoid that. I am a vampire, by the way, so no, it didn't kill me for standing in fire. But just move to the side so you're not standing in it. Sprinting off the Gratwood won't save you. It will just make you run into something else. Now, the tank can pull them through. I know they're not in a portal, but behind it. It doesn't matter, you can go straight through it. You can still pull them in. Again, focus the two-hander, otherwise you're in trouble, and interrupt the ranged guy by the side. You can see he's a healer as well, so you don't want that to happen, especially not on the two-hander because they really, really hurt. Now, the last enemy, of course, is this Lurcher again. Tank grabs him, turn him around, interrupt when you need to. When he starts shaking, bash him. There he goes. Not happening. Sorted. Piece of cake. Now, this next boss has a very, very simple mechanic. You'll note that the damage is quite low for the most part in here because we've deliberately taken off any extra damage bonuses. There's no spell power. We've taken off war horns and all that kind of stuff because although we can burn stuff, that's not what we want to show you. We want to show you the mechanics. So I've deliberately held back on stuff in this particular dungeon and in some of the later ones as well. Some of the DLC ones coming up, instead of burning stuff like we usually do on the live stream, all the mechanics are shown. Now, first of all, you've got the two-hander dude in the middle. Make sure you grab him. Of course, he's the primary target. As you can see, Fire's just grabbed him instantly and clawed everything up, so nothing's moving. Pin them all in the middle, as much AoE as possible, save your ultimates. Now on this boss you can go for the nuke, but I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have enough damage to do that. So the boss comes out of the portal and basically the tank should turn him around away from the group. And during the fight, he will obviously hit the tank quite hard, so you need to be blocking some of the big stuff, big heavy attacks and stuff like that. But he will also put AoEs down on the ground, which you're about to see. Now the trick to this is to stay out of them, of course, because they do a lot of damage. There's one there. The tank can sustain through that, but a DPS and a healer probably will not. It's quite strong. But even so, as a tank, you can still stand out of it. Do not spin the boss on the group because he has a nasty AoE in front of him. Now when this happens, get in the AoEs. So if they're negative and they're nasty, get out. And when they're white, get in. Then when the room changes again, get back out. Very, very simple, but an unusual mechanic. That's not used very much in the game. So when they're like that, you stay out. And when they're white, you stay in. And then from there, you just burn him down. It will just repeat until he's dead. It's a very simple mechanic, but at first glance that looks a little bit odd. You wouldn't think in most mechanics to actually stand in the AoEs, but for that one you can. Only when they're white. Now we're going to go through this portal again, back out to where we came from. Go down the tunnel. There's going to be 2 portals, but what you can do is just run to the end of the corridor and you can drag stuff in as and when they appear. So we go off to the right. You can go to the left if you prefer. There's portals either side, but we tend to go to the right. This is before what you would normally see as the last boss on Elden 1, but in Elden 2 there's another one. I won't spoil that just yet. So there's a portal that appears here where we're standing, and then if we keep running, there's another one that appears in front of us. So dodge roll through the enemies here, let the tank grab everything and pull it behind the portal, and then anything that is ranged from the front portal, the one we ran through that you didn't see spawn, will actually have to come to us because of where we're standing. With that in mind, obviously the tank can keep eyes on the tunnel and then pull them in as and when they need to. As you saw, I copped a heavy attack then. You need to make sure you block that. Luckily, we've got a very strong healer. Sword and boards always take priority. Range need to be interrupted. And burn the scamps down with AoE, if any come through. We do get a lurker here again after this guy's dead. Here he comes from the bottom portal. You can see him running down the corridor. Tank grabs him straight away, spin him away from the group. And now we don't have to deal with his messiness in front of his face. Make sure you interrupt him, of course, when he's doing his little shake. Apart from that, they're not too threatening, as long as they don't run wild. You can see that most of the time we are standing still and not sprinting around the room. Remember, running away from something will not get it off you. The tank needs to taunt it. So bring it to the tank. Running around the room just makes the tank sprint around and waste resources that they need. This boss is very simple, kind of a stack and burn scenario. Just stay out the AoEs, let the tank pull in the adds, and keep as much area of effect damage down as possible. Interrupt them if you need to. They will try and fear members of the group, so just be aware of that. If you chain them in while they're channeling, you can actually prevent them from doing that. So keep your eyes open if you're the tank. Again, make sure you interrupt those. This guy's got a heavy attack and lots of AoEs on the ground, but as long as you stay out of the nasty stuff, he's really not that much of a problem. Like I said, it's a very simple stack and burn boss, especially once the adds are down. You can see that, of course, I am in the AoEs occasionally. They do damage over time, but because our healer has got so many mitigating effects with his damage shields and heals and such, you can kind of nip in and nip out again to get your dots on if you're careful. Just don't stand in there too long. As you can see though, a very simple fight. The boss never moves as long as the tank doesn't dance around the room. Literally just taunt him and hold him still. Now the last boss, Bogdan the Night Flame. This is an awesome looking boss, of course. For those of you that favor Titans, you are going to really like this one. We are going to press hard mode, of course. That's the whole point of the series, is to show you the mechanics of the fight. Now, be very, very careful on this fight. Yes, you can stack and burn it if you've got loads and loads of DPS, but no, we don't care about that. I'm trying to show people the mechanics. There are 2 types of shades on this fight. The Twilight boss that we fought downstairs had shadows that fear you. Those are present in this fight, so you do want to make sure you get rid of them. But there is also another shade, but it's not really dark, it's actually light instead, and these actually heal the boss. Now, these can be interrupted or killed, it's entirely up to you, or both, but you have to pay attention to all of them. So we forced mechanics here, we reduced our DPS to make sure that mechanics happened. Now, the boss will heavy attack the tank, just hold him still. You don't have to move around the room. Do your damage, do your heals. You can see we're not moving around. Then periodically through the fight, he will actually jump and kill all the adds as well. So keep an eye on those. You can see the shadow over there. Kill the shadow. It's fearing the tank. The boss will obviously put flames on the floor, so do your best to stay out of them. And when he jumps, like that, block. All you have to do is block. All the flames will go away, all the ads will go away. You can see the beam, there's the healing ad. So you kill this and interrupt it as well. Every time it tries to heal, interrupt it. Stay out of the fire, interrupt it when you can, and get it down. Then back on the boss. There's another one, just keep interrupting it and carry on. You can keep as much damage on the boss as you like, but make sure you interrupt these healers and make sure you do kill those shadows, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. Occasionally they'll spawn behind the tank. As you can see, there's a shadow just to the left of me, near the boss, where the tank has actually taunted it. Now that wasn't to get the aggression of it or to get its attention, that was to actually debuff it with Pierce Armor, meaning we can do more damage to it. So there's a little tactic there, but if you are going to apply Pierce Armor to any of these little targets, be sure that you do not spin the boss. Of course, keep as much heals and AoE down as possible, stay out of the fire as much as you can, not more than a second or so, otherwise you're in trouble, and keep focusing on these ads. Again, he jumped, always block when he jumps. If you do so, everything in the room will disappear and you will be fine. Not a problem at all. Again, there's a shadow beside me, so you need to make sure we've got some area of effect down and start burning him down so he dies. Get rid of him, stay out of the fire. Healing ad, interrupt it. You don't even have to kill the healing ads if you really don't want to. You can just keep them interrupted so they don't heal the boss. And eventually when he jumps, you'll be fine. Another shadow. Shadows must die because they'll fear you off the cliff. They're awful. It's not a straightforward fear in one direction. He can actually fear you into multiple different directions throughout the whole duration of it until you decide to break free. It's really, really tricky. Block. Everything's gone. And that will happen throughout the whole fight. There'll be shadow ads, there'll be healing ads, there'll be flames, then there'll be a jump, and then everything will reset. Shadow ad down, healing ad, interrupt it. At this point in time, it's a bit of a rinse-repeat scenario. Keep your large AoEs down so that you can still damage the shadows if they're too close to the tank. Keep the boss turned away from the group at all times, block the heavy attacks, and you're good to go. So to recap quickly over the tank and DPS points of view, DPS and the healer stay in a kind of a triangle formation unless you have to move from flames. Interrupt the healers, kill the shadows, tank never spins the boss. Very, very simple. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, and hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach the mechanics of that particular dungeon. Yes, of course, there are lots of different tactics that you can apply, but that's a very simple way of explaining it so you understand what to do. Can you burn those mechanics? Yes, of course you can, but you got to start somewhere first. Anyway, firstly, thank you very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you're not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website, XynodeGaming.com, where all the written guides and the forum is as well. And of course, I live stream at 10 PM UK time every night on Twitch. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.